It's a stormy December day as the passengers and crew of a United 777 were preparing for departure. However, shortly after takeoff, the airplane suddenly starts pitching abruptly down towards the ocean below. This is the unsettling story of what happened to United Flight 1722 and how this very event could have been the country's worst air disaster. Stay tuned. This is a fairly recent story taking place on December the 18th, 2022 in the United States. More precisely in the island state of Hawaii. Maui is known to many for its beautiful beaches and stunning terrain, attracting a lot of tourists from all around the world. United Airlines Flight 1722 was taking passengers and crew back to the mainland of the US on this 4.5-hour long flight to San Francisco. Today's flight is operated by a 22-year-old Boeing 777-200. The aircraft's total time in service has reached a total of 74,017 hours. The last inspection the aircraft had was in August of 2021 with no faults found. On this flight there were a total of 271 passengers on board and 10 crew. In the cockpit we can find 2 pilots preparing the 777 for departure. In the captain's seat, a very experienced 55-year-old male with a total of 19,600 hours in total and a total of 5,000 hours on type was in command of this aircraft. Next to him, his co-pilot was seated and he had a total of 5,000 hours, but only 120 hours on this particular aircraft. Even in December, the islands of Hawaii usually experience pretty pleasant weather. However, on this day the weather was pretty rough with heavy rain and strong winds, with even the possibility of wind shear being present. Even though the weather was being pretty rough, it was still way below the aircraft's operational limits and the aircraft could take off without any problems. With that, the 2 pilots completed their cockpit preparations and started taxiing to the runway. For this flight, the cockpit crew have decided that the 55-year-old captain would be the pilot flying, while the first officer would handle the radio. The crew had initially decided for a flaps 15 departure, but during the taxi to the runway, the tower advised them that a low-level wind shear advisory were in effect. Based on this information, the crew chose a flaps 20 maximum thrust takeoff instead. The takeoff run and initial climb were completely normal without any incidents. This bit was flown manually by the captain with the auto throttles engaged. As the aircraft continued to gain altitude, the aircraft suddenly encountered some turbulence, causing the airspeed to start fluctuating. Reaching the acceleration altitude, the captain reduced the pitch attitude slightly and called for flaps 5. However, this command was misunderstood as, according to the first officer, he interpreted the captain's call for flaps 5 as a call for flaps 15. Thereby, flaps 15 were selected by the first officer, before he moved on to contacting the departure controller to discuss the weather conditions. This misunderstanding led to the maximum operating speed indicator to move to a lower value than expected by the captain. Furthermore, the airspeed began to accelerate quickly. The captain was a little startled by this fact, and he noticed that something was wrong here. So when he noticed this, he slightly reduced the engine thrust manually, which overrided the auto throttle. And rather quickly, the captain began diagnosing the issue and what possibly could be wrong here. When he noticed that the flap indicator still was showing 15 degrees, he then again called for flaps 5, which the first officer confirmed and completed. Shortly after, the flaps were moved to flaps 1. During this misunderstanding, the first officer later stated that he knew that the captain was having difficulties with the airspeed control, which for me personally is a sign of good crew resource management, showing that a rather inexperienced 777 pilot can notice in which areas his captain can improve. However, this should not come as a surprise, as the first officer's low total number on type most likely is an indicator on that he just recently finished flight training and still has all his training freshly in his memory. Anyways, on that regard, the first officer asked the captain if he considered his side of the instrumentation to be faulty and showing strange indications, to which the first officer never did get an answer to. Simultaneously, the aircraft's altitude starts decreasing and the airspeed increasing. The first officer then notices how the airspeed increases even more as he sees the control column being moved forward. A few moments later, as the aircraft was crossing 2100 feet, the plane suddenly starts dropping towards the ocean below. The descent rate just increases further and further as the plane dives in the direction of the Pacific Ocean. Data from flight radar later revealed that the plane reached a negative descent rate of over 8,000 feet per minute. The passengers were terrified and screaming as the aircraft less than 2 minutes after departure starts dropping down towards the ocean. In the cockpit, the GPWS, the Ground Proximity Warning System, activated, telling the pilots to pull up. This dive towards the ocean lasted for a gut-wrenching 15 seconds until the captain pulled aft on the control column and initially reduced power to reduce airspeed. After the captain gained control of the aircraft again, he initiated the CFIT, Controlled Flight into Terrain procedure. Furthermore, the crew ensured that the flaps were fully retracted and that the speed brakes were stowed. The autopilot was now engaged as well. Data later revealed that the lowest altitude the aircraft reached was 748 feet, which means it was only 5.2 seconds away from crashing into the Pacific Ocean. After this whole ordeal was over, the flight continued climbing to its cruising altitude and flew as planned to San Francisco. The report stated that the remainder of the flight was uneventful. Since the incident did not reportedly meet the requirements of federal regulations, the NTSB was not immediately notified of this incident. Nevertheless, 2 months after the incident, when the board learned about the event, an investigation was started, and this now leads us to the final report and the aftermath. This incident definitely shows us how close a simple misunderstanding, combined with other factors such as bad weather, can bring an aircraft from crashing. Luckily, all 281 passengers and crew survived this incident without any injuries. The NTSB investigation determined the probable cause to this incident to be pilot error. To elaborate, quote, "The flight crew's failure to manage the airplane's vertical flight path, airspeed, and pitch attitude following a miscommunication about the captain's desired flap setting during the initial climb." Furthermore, as a direct result of this event, United Airlines modified one of their operation training modules to address this occurrence and issued an awareness campaign about flight path management. Dear viewers, once again, thank you for watching. As always, please make sure to leave some feedback on how you liked the video. Both positive and constructive are welcome if you have any. I'm by all means not a pilot or professional in that regard, and there are definitely far better video documentaries in this class out there. However, I really enjoy watching this kind of videos myself and I find it interesting. This is why I made this video for you guys to watch, and I hope you found some interest in it. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and bye bye.